Hare Krishna, everyone. Please accept my humble obeisance. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to Wisdom. Wisdom is mainly for nectar from senior devotee experience with Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada make one platform, then whole world can live together, peace and happy. So we highly recommend it. Please take advantage and join the ISKCON and life become peace and happy. So we talk all senior devotees. Today we have on senior devotee. There is Krishnadas Kaviraj Prabhu. Krishnadas Kaviraj Prabhu is direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he did a lot of service in Canada and outside also, and make many new devotee and devotee like him, and he have a lot of experience with Krishna consciousness. So we going little, we can talk a lot of things about him, but little biography with taking Dipeshwari Radhika Devi. So I enter her, she will explain something. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisance. All glorious to Srila Prabhupada. His Grace Krsnadasa Kaviraja Das is initiated by Srila Prabhupada. He has served in the Ottawa and Toronto Temple since 1974. He is married for over 44 years to his wife Purnamashi Devi Dasi, also initiated by Srila Prabhupada. They have two daughters. He wears a Hare Krishna t-shirt even on the job as a respiratory therapist, sharing his spiritual wealth at every opportunity. He regularly performs Harinam Sankirtan on the streets of Toronto. As a member of TASC, Task for the Assessment of Sannyasa Candidates, he serves the Sannyasa ministry. He makes regular appearance in Bhakti Marg Maharaj dramatic productions. He is the president of chair of the GBC devotees and serves on the board of directors of Ottawa, Toronto, and some other temples in the greater Toronto area. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Very nice. Nice to have.
Oh, you're muted, Prabhu.
So we are so happy and gratitude to honor that Prabhu is here with us and sharing his experience with Srila Prabhupada. And also we are topic of devotional service. And later on we go for some question and answer. So we are very grateful to you because you are here. Please accept my humble obeisance to him. And we're getting from more things to learn from you. It is nectar, something coming to you. So I telling you start with your beginning Srila Prabhupada going on, then we can go through step by step. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutle Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharne Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Vastyati Desatarne Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripasindubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So it's a great honor for me to be here with all of you today. It was in 1973 that I had been searching for the absolute truth in a lot of different ways. I had been reading different books. In 1973, I was 19 years old. And I was going to university at the University of, I had done 1 year at McGill in 1970 to 71, and then 71 to 72, 71 to 73, I was, till 74, actually, I was a student in Ottawa University. And I was actually hoping that I would eventually become a doctor. But I realized that keeping people alive and maybe a little healthier, or keeping them alive a little longer, is fine. But if I don't know what is the purpose of life, then what's the use of keeping people alive a little longer or a little happier, just so that they end up dying anyway? Everybody dies. So it became important to me to figure out what is the goal of life. Why are we here? Where have we come from? Where are we going to? And it came to a head one night when I was discussing with some a friend's parents. We were over at their house, and they just started saying, oh, you have all these lofty ideas and these lofty goals to try to find the goal of life, but you'll just end up falling into the material way of things, and you won't even worry about that in a few years. And I found that extremely frustrating. And I can remember going to bed that night, and I was crying. I just started crying. I said, oh God, I just want to know. I just want to know. I just want to know. And I just kept saying that over and over again. Please, God, I just want to know. Why am I here? I just want to know. Please let me know. I just want to know. And the tears were pouring out of my eyes. I can remember I was really, really upset. I really wanted to know. Now, up until that time, during my years at McGill, because McGill was very close to the temple in Montreal, the old bowling alley in Montreal that Prabhupada originally set up. I'd seen devotees a few times, and I'd seen them with tilak on and their shaved heads and the robes. And I, unlike many devotees during that time who were immediately attracted by the chanting of the holy name, I thought the devotees were a little odd and a little crazy, and I honestly kept avoiding them. If I saw a devotee walking towards me down the street, I would actually cross the street to try to avoid the devotee. And so I was thinking, no, these, I don't need to, I don't want to go near these people. I have nothing to do with these people. So it was in 1973, after having that episode where I was crying and saying, I just want to know, I just want to know. The very next day, Srila Prabhupada, somehow or other, Krishna arranged that I met a devotee who was no longer living in the temple, in the community of devotees. So he had some hair. He wasn't wearing tilak. He did have neck beads on, but he was... and he sat down beside me in a park, and he started explaining a lot of the different things that, he sort of started. We were actually sitting in the park, and there was a bumblebee flying from flower to flower, and he said to me, "Do you see that bumblebee? He got that body from desires from a previous lifetime." And I looked at him like, what did you just say? And as soon as I heard that, I realized, wow, this person knows a lot more about spiritual life than I do. And so I started asking questions, and we were both, this was in a park in Nanaimo, British Columbia, on Vancouver Island. And we were both waiting for the ferry to go back to Vancouver. And so we spent the next 2 hours waiting for the ferry in a session of almost like the book Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. And he just kept giving me all the understandings of karma and reincarnation and everything. But for 2 hours, he did not mention Krishna. He just spoke of philosophy, but without mentioning Krishna. I don't know if he sensed that maybe I had something, I was a little averse to seeing devotees or something. I don't know. But it wasn't until we actually got on the ferry and and the ferry was pulling away from the dock, and he let the name Krishna slip out. And I was like shocked. I went, wait a minute. All this philosophy for the last 2 hours that you've been explaining to me, this is in the domain of those Hare Krishna devotees? And he said, yes. And I said, and I said, really? He said, oh, and they have books about it and everything. And he said, if you have some time, when we get off the ferry in Vancouver, you can come to my place and I will show you these books. So I was shocked. Anyway, needless to say, when we got off the ferry in Vancouver, I went to his place and he showed me the books. And it was amazing. At that time, of course, the Srimad Bhagavatam was only in print up until 3rd Canto, Part 1. Anyway, I looked at the he handed me the Bhagavad Gita. I kind of leafed through it a little bit, and then I leafed through the Srimad Bhagavatam a little bit. He didn't actually give me a book. I left that apartment about 3 hours later. So we had met about 11 o'clock in the morning. And by the time we had finished the ferry ride and everything and back to Vancouver and in his apartment, it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we had spent 6 hours together just discussing philosophy. And I was very much understanding that, wow, I believe that this is the philosophy that I was asking for last night. When I was praying to God to just let me know, just let me know, just let me know, I now believe that this is the philosophy. So needless to say, I now knew that if I saw a Hare Krishna devotee on the street, I wanted to go right up to him and ask him, what is this all about? Tell me more, give me a book, do something, And I was working in Banff later that summer and I met the devotees again. Again, they didn't give me a book, which is really kind of odd. But there was a sannyasi, I can't remember his name right now, who was traveling with a few devotees, and they were in Banff, and I went and saw the devotees in the park, and they invited everybody. There was about 100 people around the kirtan party, and then they gave a little talk, and then they had said, anybody who wants to chant more with us can come in closer and sit down with us. And just myself and one old lady were the only two people out of about 100 people who went and sat down with the devotees. And so I sat there and chanted with them for about another hour, and then they all packed up and left, and I was just kind of standing there, well, what do I do now? And so, but somehow or other, Krishna took care of me. Krishna understood that maybe I had to figure out a few more things philosophically or whatever. Anyway, I ran into a few different books. I went to the bookstore, of course, in that time, working at the Banff Springs Hotel, I think my hourly wage was 75 cents an hour. And the Macmillan Bhagavad Gita was $4.95, the big paperback edition, $4.95. And I said, wow, that's a big book. And I don't know if I could read that whole book, but there's the little Penguin Bhagavad Gita for $1. I'll buy that one. and of course, it wasn't translated by Prabhupada. And I took it home and I read it and I was like, this doesn't mean anything. Action, reaction, you should do stuff and not do stuff. And, it was really confusing, very confusing. And so I was kind of like, okay. But then I met the devotees again when I went, after finishing working that summer in Banff, I went back to school at Ottawa U, and the devotees were starting a temple there. And many of you may know Balakrishna, who is on the farm in Sharanagati. and he's been to Calgary many times, and he met me in the hallways of the university, and oh, Hare Krishna, and I started talking to him, and he just started again, sort of perfect questions, perfect answers, and I was studying. In my last semester or last year of university, I had switched from science, aiming towards becoming a doctor, and I'd switched to I was still taking an anatomy physiology course and a psychology course, but then I was also taking English, French, a philosophy of religion course, and a philosophy course. So I was explaining his answers to the teachers of my philosophy course and my philosophy of religion course. And they also had questions, so I'd go back to him with the questions because I didn't have the answers, and so I was hearing from Balakrishna, chanting it to my teachers. Then I'd get the questions from them. I'd take the questions back, inquire from Balakrishna. So it really became a really good exercise in Shravanam Kirtanam, and I got somehow or other purified enough, and I started going to the temple, attending Sunday feasts. It was a very small temple. It was just a small house with a little living room, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, and then it had an adjoined dining room, which was 10 feet by 10 feet, and half of the dining room was actually the altar area, with just a picture of Panchatattva and pictures of Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta, Gaurikishore. Of course, I didn't know who any of those personalities were. But I knew that the philosophy was so solid and so strong, even after a very short time. I knew that this is the absolute truth. I just felt it in my heart right away. Everything rang true. It answered all the questions, explained everything right off. Whereas I'd been brought up Roman Catholic, and there were still so many questions that I had that had never been properly answered in the Catholic Church. And so then I at one point just Bhakti. Many of you may know Bhakti Raghava Swami. He was a bhakta at that time. He was, at one point, we were both just attending the temple in the evenings and reading, going to Artik, having a Gita class, then having hot milk and reading Krishna book. And then we'd both leave the temple, and he'd go to his place and I'd go to my place. And eventually, Bhakta Rayal, as he was known back then, moved into the temple. And about a month before I did. And at one point, I remember we were sitting after the class. He had been now living in the temple for about 3 weeks, and he's 3 weeks. And he said to me, do you like this philosophy? And I said, oh, yes, for sure. And he said, well, do you think it's important that other people know this philosophy? And I said, oh, very much so. And he said, well, don't you think it would be better if you were living in the temple and then you could come with us and we go out and distribute this philosophy to so many people? And I said, yep, that's what I want to do. And so at the next week I moved in. And so I moved into the temple in Ottawa and was a brahmachari for the first 3 years. And then it was arranged. Of course, in those days, it was arranged marriages in the temple, and our temple president contacted the temple president in Ottawa, and we had a right of refusal, so that if our temple president would phone Toronto and say, "Look, I have a guy here a devotee here who wants to be married. Do you have any, devotees there who want to be married, who would like to marry him?" And so they asked a few of the, devotees there, and some of them said no. And when they first asked Purnamasi said no. And then before she said no, there was kind of an understanding that, it might be her. So the temple president in Ottawa asked me, do you want to marry Purnamasi? And I went, I don't think so. I'd only met her once in a kitchen in Toronto when we were down there from the Ottawa temple in Toronto doing a festival, and I was helping roll chapatis in the kitchen. So I really didn't, and I was thinking, no, I don't think I want to marry her. But then later on, was about 19, sort of early 76. And then later on in 76, I'd gone to India, and I'd spent some time in India with Ayodhyapati Prabhu, who is now Bibi Govinda Maharaj. And, we were all brahmacharis together. Well, he was a householder at that time, but we were in India together. And we spent some time together. And so later on, eventually I started to realize that, maybe Purnamasi would be the person that I should marry. And so we were asked again if we wanted to marry each other. And Ayodhyapati Bibi Govinda Maharaj told Purnamasi that, he seems like a good guy. I mean, I'd try. And he seems mature and everything. And so he said, yeah, you should marry him. And so we eventually got married. We got married legally. In those days, we would often, because we didn't have priests in the temples who could actually perform legal marriages. And so we got legally married the day after Nityananda's appearance day in 1977. So in February of 77. And then we ended up getting our wedding was on Balaram's appearance day in Ottawa in 1977. And so we spent a little bit more time in Ottawa, and we spent about 8 or 9 months in Montreal temple, and then back in Ottawa. And then eventually, in those days, it wasn't allowed that you could just leave a temple. You couldn't just say, oh, I'm going to go to the Toronto temple. I don't like it here in Ottawa, and I'm just going to go. I mean, you could do that, but it was considered Maya. But we got traded. They would trade devotees. Temples would actually trade devotees, so they would say, well, look, Purnamasi and Krsnadasa are both good Sankirtan devotees. So if they go to Toronto, we want to get 2 good Sankirtan devotees back. And so that's what happened. And so we ended up in Toronto, and we've kind of been in Toronto ever since. And so it's been, many years of service. And it was one of the things that I remember about Srila Prabhupada and being in Srila Prabhupada's movement was that I always felt that Srila Prabhupada was there for me. Even though in the early days, I was talking with some devotees yesterday about this, in the early days, up until about 1971 or 72, devotees had very easy access to Srila Prabhupada. Almost every devotee would have written letters to Srila Prabhupada or had spoken, to some extent with Srila Prabhupada. After about 1973 to 74, access to Srila Prabhupada was diminished because Srila Prabhupada was very busy. I think Srila Prabhupada understood that he had limited time, as we all do, but he realized that he had to really work to get the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Charitamrita published before he left the planet. So because the access was much less, I saw Srila Prabhupada the first time when I did get initiated in 1974. I joined in April of 1974, and I got my first initiation in July of 1974 in New Vrindavan in West Virginia. And Srila Prabhupada was there. And I just remember feeling that this is the most important, most significant day of my life. Getting the Maha Mantra from Srila Prabhupada and being accepted into the Vaishnava family. And I really, to this day, feel a great sense of gratitude. Even the materialists these days often talk about an attitude of gratitude. And I think that that is one of the most important things that we have to have as devotees. We have to be very, very thankful that we get to associate with the greatest people on the planet. And why are they the greatest people on the planet? Because they really have our spiritual interest in their hearts. Each devotee is not interested in, they don't look at another devotee in the sense that I want to get something material from them. You know, karmis in the material world, the people who are milling about in the material world, they're all looking at each other. What can I get from this person? How can I, enjoy this person? What can this person do for me? But devotees don't think like that. Devotees are thinking, how can I serve this person? How can I help this person become more spiritually minded? And hopefully I can serve them and I can give them more Krishna consciousness. So in this way, being in Srila Prabhupada's family was a very special thing. So I didn't really get a chance to see Srila Prabhupada that much. Saw him in New Vrindavan. Then I saw him again. The next time I saw Srila Prabhupada was in 1975 at Rath Yatra in Philadelphia. We drove down from the Ottawa temple and went to see Srila Prabhupada there. And then we... the next time I saw Srila Prabhupada was in India in 1976 when I went there and spent time with Bibi Govinda Swami and a number of other devotees. Many of you may know Lakshminath Prabhu from Montreal. He and I joined in the Ottawa temple just a couple of months apart. He joined just a couple of months after me. And so we had both gone together to Mayapur and Vrindavan in 1976 with all the devotees. And so I did get to see Srila Prabhupada almost every day in Mayapur. I heard Srila Prabhupada giving his lectures. Srila Prabhupada did walk around and ring the bell, and there were a number of times when I was almost standing right beside Srila Prabhupada as he was ringing that bell in Mayapur. And there was one instance in Mayapur where Lakshminath and I were actually sitting in the Lotus building. Many of you may or may not know, but there's the first floor balcony of the Lotus building, and then Srila Prabhupada's quarters were up on the next floor. So there was a bench right near the steps going up to the next floor, and where Srila Prabhupada's quarters were. And Lakshminath Prabhu and I were sitting there in the morning chanting our japa. All of a sudden, a devotee came running down the stairs and said, I need help. The devotee who normally helps me clean Srila Prabhupada's rooms is no longer... he's not to be found, and I don't know where he is. Can somebody come and help me? And he didn't ask us at first because we were sitting at one end of the bench, and there was another devotee sitting closer to where this Prabhu came down the stairs to ask for somebody to help. So they had that conversation at first, and Lakshminath and I had overheard the conversation. And that first devotee that he asked to help clean Prabhupada's room, believe it or not, that devotee said, I'm sorry, Prabhu, I have to chant my rounds. And Lakshminath and I were like shocked. And so when he turned and looked at us, we just went, yeah, we'll come, we'll do it. And so we ran up the stairs and we got to sweep out Srila Prabhupada's room. We got to make Srila Prabhupada's bed. So the Prabhupada had slept in the bed that night. We got to, put our head right on the sheet where Srila Prabhupada's feet had been. We got to take off the old sheets, put on new sheets. Then we swept out the whole room, and both of us went out on the balcony, and we had the dustpan, the dustpan full of dust. from the floor of Prabhupada's room. And we took it out over the balcony and we poured it over our heads, because we had heard that the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotee is the most valuable thing in all the universes. And so we just rubbed that dust into our heads, and it was an amazing experience just to be able to be there and helping, clean Srila Prabhupada's rooms. And then about maybe just a few days later, Srila Prabhupada was about to be going to Narsingapol in Mayapur, in Navadvip, where Lord Nrsingadev actually came to Navadvip after his killing of Hiranyakashipu, and because he wanted to come and visit the holy place, the holy Dham. And so Srila Prabhupada was going that day also on pilgrimage to Nrsinghapoli. So Srila Prabhupada was sitting in a car at that time right at the base of the steps of the Lotus building. And Lakshminath and I ended up right beside the window where Srila Prabhupada was sitting in the back seat of the car. And we were chanting, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. And the kirtan was going on. There were a lot of devotees all around. And Harisori Prabhu was in the car, and they were just about to pull away. And all of a sudden, Harisori jumped up and said, "We don't have Prabhupada's sweater." Somebody ran up to got Prabhupada's sweater and came down. And so we were still chanting. And then somebody said, "We don't have Prabhupada's cane." Somebody ran up and got Prabhupada's cane and brought it down, and Prabhupada, they were just about to drive away again, and Prabhupada was looking up at us, very sweetly smiling, enjoying the kirtan, relishing the kirtan in the mood of pure devotion that he always did. Because Prabhupada said the kirtan, one time he asked the devotee, "Did you enjoy the kirtan?" The devotee said, "Oh, yes." And Prabhupada said, "It's not for your enjoyment, it's for Krishna's enjoyment." So anyway, Prabhupada was relishing the kirtan in the mood of devotion to Krishna. So he's sitting there and they're about to drive away again. And all of a sudden, Harisari jumps out again and says, "We don't have any water." And in those days in Mayapur, there was no bottled water. There were no stores out beyond the gate. There was nothing beyond the gate. Nobody had realized that the Hare Krishna, temple area was a source of money or Lakshmi or anything like that. But they had encouraged us the year before, the devotees who had gone the year before said, make sure you take a good canteen so you can fill it with good water. And the Ganga at that time was flowing way over on the other side. It was, on the other side of Bhakti Siddhanta Road. You could walk almost a mile before you would get to the Ganga. And now the Ganga is right there almost. It's, just a few hundred feet from the Bhakti Siddhanta Road. So we were every morning filling our canteens with Ganga water from the Ganga. And so I had a freshly filled canteen full of Ganga water. And I was standing chanting beside Srila Prabhupada. And when Harisari jumped out of the car and said, "We don't have any water," I immediately just took off my canteen, slid it across the roof of the car. And Harisari Prabhu said, "Thank you," and got in. And Srila Prabhupada just looked up at me with this just thankful, so he was so thankful and so gracious and appreciative that I had given my water so that they could get on their way. And he just looked up at me and nodded with a big smile as they drove off. And that's probably the most personal service I ever did for Srila Prabhupada. But for me, it was the deepest and most heartfelt thank you that I'd ever gotten in my life. And I really just felt that I definitely have a close relationship with my spiritual master, even though we've never said even a Hare Krishna to each other, besides through the door of the car, going Hare Krishna, like that. So it was really a very close experience. And then, of course, later that year in 1976, Srila Prabhupada came to Toronto. And I was in Toronto. I heard Srila Prabhupada again give Bhagavatam class every morning and some other classes. But again, I didn't get to be with Prabhupada in a darshan at all or anything, because we were just thinking we've just got to do our mission, go out on Sankirtan, do our preaching, come back in the evening, hear Prabhupada maybe give a class in the evening. But we really had nothing to do with going to try to see Srila Prabhupada. And that was actually, unfortunately, the last time I saw Srila Prabhupada on this planet. But it's amazing how, and Srila Prabhupada did say that when I am speaking these purports, these are my personal meditations, and I am speaking them to each and every one of you. And when Prabhupada said you, he didn't just mean his direct disciples, because he was speaking, he said that his books would be the law books for the next 10,000 years. So Prabhupada is speaking to everyone who comes in contact with those books for the next 10,000 years. So Prabhupada was speaking to millions of people, but he was speaking his most intimate realizations of Krishna, in the early hours of the mornings when he was there, and sharing that with us. And it's so important that we read Srila Prabhupada's books. I mean, nowadays there are so many books coming out from our gurus and from other gurus and all kinds of things, and we sometimes forget that the source of it all is Srila Prabhupada. And so we should, at first and foremost, we should make sure that we've completely read all of Srila Prabhupada's books. Or at least have a program where you're reading Srila Prabhupada's books, and possibly at the same, so spend maybe half an hour a day reading Srila Prabhupada's books, or an hour a day. And then after that, you can have maybe a half an hour of reading your own guru book, or your guru's books, or books from other devotees, or other devotional books, because there are so many, and there's so many memories of Srila Prabhupada out there too, from different devotees like that. So, and those are all great. I mean, I'm not minimizing them in any way. What I'm really doing is, those are great, they're fantastic, they're wonderful, but I'm maximizing the greatness of Srila Prabhupada's books, and how we each have to really develop a deep understanding of those books, and then we will be more able to spread the message of Krishna consciousness, because those words will purify our hearts, and purity is the basis. So we will be able to influence others by that purity, by that sense that now I understand. If we understand, if I come to understand the purpose of life, and my relationship with Krishna, even in a small way, that das anudas, then at least if I can just share that realization with somebody else, then that will help me to become very dear to Srila Prabhupada, to Lord Chaitanya, and to Krishna. Because Krishna does say in Bhagavad Gita, what is 1868 and 69, that one who preaches this message to the devotees is most dear to me, and no one will ever be more dear. So by being a member of the Hare Krishna movement, it really is our mission to become purified, to really understand Krishna consciousness, and to try to help others to understand Krishna consciousness. And thus, don't become, it's okay to be a doctor, an MD, but ultimately it's much better to become a doctor of the soul. So we have to become, like Srila Prabhupada was the Acharya, Bhakti Vedanta. We have to understand the Vedanta, the essence of the Vedas, and how it's bhakti. and give that bhakti to others. It's a great gift to give to ourselves. By reading Srila Prabhupada's books, we're giving ourselves that gift. And then by distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, we're giving others that gift. So I think I've kind of touched on a lot of different things and spoken a little bit about Srila Prabhupada and my understanding. So I think I'll open it up to the question period now. Is that all right, Sachiprang
Yes,
Prabhu?
that's all right. So it is wonderful experiencing Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes Krishna is so merciful. If you have desired something, Krishna make it. Like you say, Mayapur, your desire to serve Krishna, and Krishna give opportunity to serve Srila Prabhupada. So ultimately serving Krishna, because Srila Prabhupada is representative of Krishna. We
That's
cannot
right.
get directly to Krishna. We have to go by Guru. And
That's right.
Srila Prabhupada is very pure soul. So anybody can, and also Srila Prabhupada like star stone. Anybody just touching Srila Prabhupada getting spiritual power.
That's right.
And we see
Srila Prabhupada said anybody who even touches the book
also getting.
becomes completely fortunate. Yeah.
So this is very, very wonderful gift of our age of Kali.
Yes.
So very wonderful experience, and new generation have to take advantage about this. So now we are coming question and answer, and I also thank you so much for your nice explanation of experience with Srila Prabhupada. So already you explained, but still I need to know what is the most things you attract the Hare Krishna movement. They have a lot of things, but what is the most things you attract that time?
Well, I must say, at first I was not attracted, but then one of the things that really did attract me when I did start coming, well, actually the first time I went to a Sunday feast, I can remember I was not even immediately attracted by prasadam. It just kind of seemed a little foreign to me. The rice, the dal, the sabji, all they were simply wonderful and like that. And it was just it was a little too foreign for me. But it grew on me very quickly, and I think within a couple of weeks, I was really enjoying prasadam, and I think that is probably one of our secret weapons. Srila Prabhupada did say it's a kitchen religion. By distributing prasadam, it can affect the heart of many people, and I've seen that personally. I know that. In the same way that I used to run away from devotees, we had that very early on in the Ottawa temple. I can remember Dharmaraj Prabhu. I'm not even sure where he is now. I think he's in the northwestern United States, and he may even be running a restaurant still, because he used to run a lot of restaurants. He was a very good cook, and he would make this burfi that was peanut butter oat burfi. And we'd make it into little squares, and we would wrap it in foil. And we would, whenever we went out on Harinam during the daytime, we had a lot of these little squares of burfi with us. And it didn't take, we started handing them out, and pretty soon, every time we went out on Harinam, we had people running up to us. It was so good.
Like candy.
Yeah. People would run up to us and say, "Do you have any more of that stuff? It's so good." And so prasadam is definitely a secret weapon to getting to the soul of non-devotees and helping them to understand how wonderful Krishna is. And they really do often start, even though they may be initially attracted by prasadam, very soon they start to say, "Well, what's this all about? Tell me more." And then immediately, the soul begins to awaken and go, "Hey, I've heard this before. I know this. This is something that I remember doing in billions and zillions of lifetimes ago in the spiritual sky. I was with Krishna and I was there." And the soul starts to wake up. almost immediately and start to go, and that's what attracts people to Krishna consciousness. Yeah.
Yes. For me also, when in early 90 in Singapore, every Sunday I am going for prasadam. So nice prasadam. So at that side, Singapore temple, the very nice prasadam. So
Yes.
looking for prasadam. So this is very, very attractive. Of course, definitely for me also same things.
Yeah.
So our second question is how you manage your family life and spiritual life simultaneously.
Right. Family life does mean that we definitely have a lot more responsibilities, material responsibilities. When one gets married, then one has to provide a roof over the over the house, and provide a house, and so that requires having a job and doing all those things. And I always at first, the temple was supporting myself and Purnamasi because we were actively engaged in service. And so they provided a small place for us, either a small apartment or something like that. But eventually, and especially there was a time in the 1980s where we know the whole guru zonal acharya system that kind of started to manifest and was really not a healthy time for ISKCON. And so we kind of moved away, and we ended up moving up to Lindsay, Ontario, which is 125 kilometers northeast of Toronto. And I was working, and at that point, just before we moved, I had been doing the treasury work at the temple, but I was encouraged by the temple president. He said, "Look, if you need to get a job or anything like that, or you need to take training, if you still do the treasury work, say in the morning and in the evening, we can still support you while you go back to school." And so I ended up getting into the respiratory therapy school in Toronto and learning that profession. And it was very a good profession, and it was along the lines of being in the medical field, but not being a doctor. And so I was able to get the training in 2 years. Now it's a 3-year course. It was 2 years, 20 months, so 10 months each year. And then now it's 24 months, and they've got it over 3 years. But it was, Krishna arranged that I was still getting the support from the temple, and I was doing the treasury work. And then once I got the job, I worked in Toronto for 1 year, and then I that the temple was sort of saying, well, we can't really support your house anymore, and living in Toronto was a bit more expensive than that. And I just thought the children need to grow up in a cleaner environment right in the city, and so I moved out to Lindsay, Ontario, which is a small town, and a much cleaner environment, no gangs or anything like that. And at that time in Toronto too, there were quite a few murders and things like that. So it was it didn't seem like a healthy situation. So that's why I moved up. So definitely household life is a responsibility. It's not without issues. Whenever a husband and wife come together, there's always going to be, well, not always. I mean, we do hear of rare cases where they completely get along and there's no fighting whatsoever. But I would say for most people, that doesn't happen. And there is some, so Purnamasi and I have had some rough stages, but we're solid, and we always knew that Srila Prabhupada and Krishna are the center of our lives.
Yeah,
and that is the most important understanding of household life, that our service to Krishna is the most important thing, and we can't give that up.
Yes. So it's Grihastha life, you focusing the Krishna is the object and main things, then should be everything, small things is covered up.
That's
so it is
right.
very good example, Krsnadasa Kaviraj Prabhu, this wonderful Grihastha. We have to learn from senior devotee. This is nice. And one question I asking for me, Srila Prabhupada give you name Krsnadasa Kaviraj. Kaviraj means doctor. Prabhupada knows you are studying doctor.
I don't know if he knew that or not. But at the time that I got initiated in New Vrindavan, there were 35 of us, I think, who got initiated in that ceremony. It was one of the largest initiations at one time up until that time. And I think just a little while later, there was that big initiation in Chicago with the Radhanammadar, where Prabhupada initiated quite a few more. But at that time, it was a big initiation. And Prabhupada gave names from the Chaitanya Charitamrita to all the devotees. Like, Bhakta Rayal from Ottawa, he was there also. We both got initiated at the same ceremony. And he became Raghava Pandit Das. And when Srila Prabhupada, it's interesting that when Srila Prabhupada handed my beads to me, I couldn't understand what Srila Prabhupada had said, which apparently happened to quite a few devotees. And I came away going, "What's my name?" and so I had to find Jagadish, who was our GBC at the time, and he had actually gone to Srila Prabhupada the night before with the names of the devotees being recommended for initiation, and then Srila Prabhupada was figuring out the names. And so he had it written down on a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper it said Krsnadasa Kaviraja Das. And I can remember I even though I couldn't understand what Prabhupada said, I'd kind of remembered the sound vibration. And so when I saw the name Krsnadasa Kaviraja, I realized Prabhupada actually, when he handed me my beads, he didn't say Krsnadasa Kaviraja Das. He said, "Your name is Krsnadasa Das." And he handed me my beads. So when I later on, and I talked to Jagadish, so I said, "Well, am I Krishnadas Das or am I Krsnadasa Kaviraja Das?" And Jagadish said, "Prabhupada last night told me your name will be Krsnadasa Kaviraja Das, so your name is Krsnadasa Kaviraja Das." So that's the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So all the names for that initiation were from Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I happen to get named after the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, or the transcriber of Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Yeah. Okay, guys. And this. Okay. What is the easiest way to make new devotee? You explain a little bit, but
Yeah. I honestly feel that, and I think most devotees would probably agree with this, that they became devotees because they realized that they were friends with the devotees. And if you can become friends with devotees, then very quickly you become a devotee.
Correct.
And so I think when we go on Harinam, Sankirtan, or book distribution, if we go to the same location over and over and over again, then oftentimes the same people will also be passing by. It's their regular route to go to work or something, or to get their lunch from the office, something like that. So they see us every day, and they become a little purified, and sometimes they may stop and talk and things like that, and you can just start developing a little bit of a relationship. And as soon as you develop that relationship, and that relationship grows and blossoms into a friendship, then pretty soon the person realizes, you know what, I I think I can be one of these people. I can perhaps I can move right into the temple if they're single and they really feel motivated that way. They might do that. But I can also I understand from them that I can still keep doing my job. I keep doing whatever I'm doing, and I can just add Hare Krishna onto it. And so then they'll gradually add more and more Krishna onto their life, and they'll eventually become devotees. So it's through that friendship with people that they realize that these people are the people that I want to be with. They're the best friends to have in the world. In fact, when I was working at the hospital in Toronto, at the Hospital for Sick Children, I remember on about 2 or 3 occasions I was asked, what is the best thing about being a Hare Krishna devotee? And the first time, it took me a little while. I was thinking, what is the best thing about being a Hare Krishna devotee? And then it just, Krishna popped it into my brain. For me comes memory, intelligence, and forgetfulness. Somehow it just popped into my brain. I get to associate with the very best people on the planet. And that's a pretty amazing thing, to be able to associate with the very best people. And so that's when I just like, wow, okay. That is my answer, and that really is true, because these are the greatest people. The people who are trying to get rid of their material desires, who are trying to be as helpful as possible to help people get out of all misery forever. Now, aren't those the best people to be with? I think so. So, and when people hear that answer, people would go, wow, yes, that is something. Yeah.
So, attachment, material attachment is very our enemy. So how can control this attachment?
In the material world, our problem since time immemorial is that we are thinking we are these bodies, right? So if we are identifying with the body, then we identify with different things that will make this body feel good, and we'll develop attachment for those things. If we really start to understand that I am not this body, that I am spirit soul. I mean, at first we hear it from the Bhagavad Gita, or a devotee tells us the first time, and we think, yeah, okay, I'm not this body, but it's not a very deep realization. But the more that we start to engage in devotional service, the more that we start to act as spirit souls in our relationship with Krishna, the more we begin to understand that I really am not this body. And so gradually the material attachments start to disappear. They become less and less. So somebody may still be living in a big house. I don't live in a big house. I live in a very small house. Of course, it's very relative. I mean, somebody would think, wow, this is a beautiful, wonderful, nice house. But it's not even 1,000 square feet. So it's not a very big house. But gradually we begin to realize that these things are not important. They are not what are qualifying me as an individual. They really have nothing to do with my so-called individuality or anything like that, whether what kind of clothes I wear or anything like that. All those things are just temporary. Even this body, whether I have a very healthy body or an unhealthy body, strong body, weak body, whether I have a good mind or a weak mind, whether I can memorize tons of verses or not memorize any verses, all those things are just material coverings. Our spirit soul is so much more than that. And so as you know, Rupa Goswami says in the Nectar of Devotion, Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatpraptena nirmalam. We have to become freed from all the upadis, all the designations.
Yes, right.
You know, so whether somebody says, "Oh, he's an intelligent devotee," well, intelligence is what it. You know, I mean, every devotee is intelligent because they're a devotee.
Yes.
So whether they can spout verses or talk about purports from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's, you know, expose on the, you know, on the Bhagavatam, or you know, if the most important thing is that if Srila Prabhupada said, the most important thing is that you love Krishna, that you come to the point of loving Krishna. It's just like the wives of the Brahmins, you know, in the story in Krishna book, when Krishna and Balaram came begging to the Brahmins were like, "Oh, no, 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 we're engaged in our sacrifices and everything." You know, they didn't get it, that the sacrifices are for Krishna. And when Krishna is coming and asking you directly, and you're saying, "No, no, sorry, you can't take part in this because, you know, you're just little boys and you're going to get in the way and you're contaminated." But the wives of the Brahmins, they just very immediately just said, "Oh, look at these two wonderful boys, Krishna and Balaram. Let's give them whatever we can." You know, so it's that developing that love for Krishna is the most important thing. And whether we're considered intelligent or not, it doesn't matter. If we develop love for Krishna, everybody, every spirit soul, you know, even not even in this body, in other bodies, you know, I mean, we have the, you know, the experience of the, you know, the dog, Shivananda Sain's dog in Chaitanya Leela, you know. So there's, and all the animals in the forest of Jarikhanda, they all developed love for Krishna.
That's right.
That's the most important thing. Yeah.
Okay, the next question is, what main things to focus our Grihastha life? Because we have a lot of experience with this.
Well, I mean, again, keeping Krishna in the center, keeping our service in the center, remembering that this is the goal of life. Grihastha life is a journey, and it's a purificatory journey where we gradually become purified of our desires, and we begin to see that really these desires are, you know, as we say in the prasadam prayer, you know, our senses are a network of paths leading us to death. And I think gradually over the course of married life, we see that, you know, all our sensory activities, they're not directed towards Krishna's service, are really detracting us. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't serve your children. Srila Prabhupada often talked about how important the children were. It doesn't mean that you negate the rest of your family, even if they don't become devotees, because I don't know if your parents are members of ISKCON or not, but, you know, there are many people, my parents never joined ISKCON, but Srila Prabhupada always said that we should honor our parents very much because they're the ones that gave us this opportunity to become devotees. And I think that a lot of the values that my parents instilled in me helped me to realize the absolute truth when it was shown to me. So I really honor and respect my family as well. But just understanding what are the priorities and where does everybody fit into those priorities. So the priority is service to Krishna, service to Srila Prabhupada. But then everybody else has a place in that service. And we have to figure out how to properly help everyone that we come in contact with, our family every day, because we're in contact with our family every day. We have to help them to become better devotees. That is really the whole crux of household life, is to help myself become a better devotee, help my wife become a better devotee, help my children become a better devotee. Even if you happen to have pets, a dog or a cat or whatever, or a, a fish, chant Hare Krishna to it, or eat plants, and of course, having a tulsi plant at home is often an essential part of being a householder. And so one can then develop that love for Krishna and help all other living entities that one comes in contact with also become devotees of Krishna. So that is really the centerpiece of household life.
Thank you so much. So, next question is, do you think any different, like in Krishna consciousness, male devotee and female devotees? Because sometime in most of India, they think, oh, male is higher than female, and this, that, a lot of things. What your opinion in this?
Right. Well,
honestly speaking,
I know that Srila Prabhupada, he considered all the female devotees, like he would speak with Govinda Dasi and Jamuna, especially also, and Dinatarine and many of the other senior Vaishnavis. He addressed them as Prabhu.
Prabhu, yes.
Yes. Prabhupada said Jamuna Prabhu, and Prabhupada said that these women, most women, if you follow them, you go nowhere. But these women, if you follow them, you will go back to Godhead. So, and he told his sannyasi disciples that one time when they came back at the Kumbh Mela, and Jamuna and the other devotees were cooking in the tent, and Prabhupada came back with the sannyasis and came to the tent, and they had just been talking a little bit about male, female, and what's better. And Prabhupada said, but if you follow these women, follow these women, you will go back home, back to Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada understood that am I a white, my father was Polish, my mother was Scottish. Does that mean I'm a white, Polish, Scottish devotee? No. I am a spirit soul that just happens to be covered with this temporary cloth, and you happen to be in an Indian body, and somebody else may be in a Chinese body or a Russian body or a female body or male body. All those things are irrelevant in terms of our devotional service. So we have history of there being Vaishnavi gurus in our disciplic line. So it's, because I know that India, many of the devotees in India are starting to think that, oh no, we have to, if they allow Vaishnavi Diksha gurus, then ISKCON India has to separate from the rest of the world. Some of the ISKCON leaders in India feel that way. Not many, but a few. But they're really pushing it on a lot of the others. But no, Srila Prabhupada directly, when he was asked by Professor O'Connell in Toronto, and Srila Prabhupada didn't say one thing to somebody and then say, oh, I was only speaking to him because, he never changed the truth due to the circumstances or the people he was talking to. He might change how he said the truth, but he didn't change the truth. So when he was asked directly, can a woman become guru in your movement? And Srila Prabhupada said, yes.
Yes.
Definitely Srila Prabhupada said yes. It's in the conversations, Professor O'Connell in Toronto. You can look it up. It's on the database. And it's a very good conversation, and you kind of have to read all the way down. And sometimes, the anti-female guru people say that, oh, well, Srila Prabhupada was just saying that because this person, he was trying to appeal to the sort of Western mind and not, get them to think that there's something wrong with our movement, that we're not egalitarian towards women or something like that. But Srila Prabhupada wasn't interested in being egalitarian to women. He was just interested in the egalitarianism of the soul. And so that's why he answered, yes, women can become guru, of course. And they can educate disciples because it's been done. It's totally ridiculous that just because, when he writes in the Bhagavatam that Suniti could not become Dhruva Maharajas, it actually, the way it's written, you can see that Srila Prabhupada said she couldn't become his guru because she was a woman, but most important was because it was his mother. You can't have that familial relationship in a guru master, disciple. You have to find somebody else. It's just like, Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't initiate his own sons. He told them to go and take initiation from other Vaishnavas. So, unlike in Hinduism today, a lot of times, the sacred thread is passed down from father to son like that. So that's not correct.
Okay.
And so similarly, the way of is passing down mantra, is, and really the Harinam mantra is the most important, because even prior to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, practically the Gayatri mantra was not even given in the Vaishnava Sampradayas. So it was for preaching purposes that Bhaktisiddhanta resurrected that. And also sannyas was not given also in Vaishnava Sampradayas. But Bhaktisiddhanta knew that the people of India understand the renunciate and the place of the renunciate in the respective, in terms of respect in society. And so he knew that it would be advantageous to take the sannyas order again, to resurrect the sannyas order again in the Vaishnava Sampradayas, and to give that to people so that they could, with that respect, they would listen to the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and go back home, back to Godhead, which is the most important thing. Let's get everybody back home, back to Godhead. Why are you languishing here in the material world where you think you're enjoying, but you're not?
Okay. Your time is going fast, so I can last question. We have a lot of questions, but I cannot go through. So last question is, what is the most important service for Krishna? Do you have any specific or?
I mean, once again, when Srila Prabhupada was asked, what would please you the most?
Yes.
And I think I answered that before. Prabhupada, his reply was that you love Krishna. The devotees were all expecting, that you distribute books, that you worship,
Yes.
that, some other kind of service, what would please you the most, some kind of service. But Prabhupada said that you love Krishna. Now, distributing Srila Prabhupada's books is an extremely important service, and Prabhupada did emphasize book distribution a lot. But not everybody is of the mindset that they can distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. It's and so, just because somebody can't distribute Srila Prabhupada's books does not mean in any way that they are not going to be able to go back home, back to Godhead. But if they try, in whichever way they can to help others, and so even if it's a mother helping her children and her family become Krishna conscious, and she doesn't distribute a book to anybody else, but she makes sure that they grow up to be Krishna conscious, then Krishna will be extremely happy. So we just have to become Krishna conscious ourselves, become lovers of Krishna ourselves, and try to make everybody else lovers of Krishna. If we do that, that's the most important.
Thank you so much, everyone. So our next guest is Lokanath Swami Maharaj is coming for devotional talk. and nectar of devotion. So thank you so much, each and everyone, and especially thanks to His Grace Krsnadasa Kaviraj Prabhu for give your time and nectarian talk with experience and devotion.
Well, thank you
So
very much.
thank you so much, and we are meet another time when have opportunity have. So thank you again, and we can say Mancha Kalpa Taru Vatsha Kripa Sindhu Yavacha Patitanoy Pavanebbo Vaishnavebbo Namo Namo. Only the Vaishnava can do. We cannot go directly to Krishna or Guru. Vaishnava can help, then we can do. Or most of senior devotee can help us. Otherwise, we have nothing to do. We have to like so fallen in age of Kali.
Well, thank you for